I'm really excited to have so many awesome speakers with us today. Speakers, I'll call on you, kind of just going around in order. And if you could say a few words, introduce yourself and how you got into Web3 gaming and the Avalanche ecosystem, that would be great. Miko, I think you're up first on my screen.
Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's great. So I'm Miko. I'm a CEO at P2E Analytics. And, my background, I was working at an investment fund in TradeFi, but, I was always been passionate about crypto and gaming. And when I came across gaming, my first time was through Axie Infinity, and that got me through the rabbit hole. And I haven't left the scene since. And then Avalanche, the first time I came across gaming there was Kribata. And, I love the performance of the Avalanche blockchain. We'll talk about that later as well, and the community there. So a few months ago, I launched P2E Analytics because I loved gaming so much and I love data. And you can check us out at p2eanalytics.com. And yeah, excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. An, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. I'm An. I'm currently the head of product at Imba. We are kind of a long, old-fashioned game studio. We mostly develop traditional games. We just stepped into blockchain gaming from last year. So far, we have 3 NFT games, and but from last year, we decided to switch on the lineups into Web3 gaming. And we have Heroes and Empires, which is one of the top game on BNB chain. But for the upcoming project, we decided to try and to use Avalanche, maybe subnet of Avalanche, and that's why I'm here. Besides, I'm also the advisor of Metados, Battle Royale game. I think this is the first Battle Royale game on Avalanche. Yeah.
Awesome. Team Crypto.
Hey guys, I'm Francis. I'm on the Shrapnel team doing business development and econ design. In terms of how I got into Web3 gaming and Avalanche, I was previously an analyst looking at layer 1s and layer 2s, seeing what's suitable for different types of products. And then Avalanche stood out because it allows you to silo your ecosystem, have your own kind of metaverse-esque environment that you can customize to your game's needs. And then in terms of gaming, I've been a long-time gamer, so I've kind of enjoyed looking at the different economic models people have created in terms of Axie Infinity, Kribata, all of that, and seeing what holes you can poke in them and how you can make them better. So Web2 gamers that come into the space in the future can get a better look at gaming and get a better feel for it when there's a tokenized economy.
Awesome. Nikhil?
Hey everyone, thanks for having me on, by the way. My name is Nikhil. I've been on the Avalabs biz dev team for just over a year now. Joined on the infrastructure and DeFi side, but in the last 6 months I've joined the sort of gaming side that's led by our head of gaming, Ed Chang, who's spent well over 5 to 6 years as the lead and partner of strategy at EA. Before that, spent a good amount of time, just sort of studying layer 1s, similar to Francis as well. Was a part of the research hub at Vasari for a bit, and so happy to start dive deep in any technical conversation that might be needed, and excited to talk to you all today.
Awesome. Will, I think you're up next.
Yes. So good morning, everyone. My name is Will. I was an investment banker before this, but crypto is just much more interesting. Gaming is much more fun. And I think gaming specifically is how we're going to onboard the next 10 to 100 million wallets in a non-zero-sum fashion to crypto. So that's why I'm really happy to focus on gaming at Avalabs. And thanks for having me.
Awesome. I think we got Tomas finally on here. Tomas, we're just introducing ourselves, so if you want to say a few words, about yourself and how you got into Web3 and what you're doing?
Yeah, sorry, coming a bit late with technical problems. So, hey, I'm Thomas Ryan. I'm the CPO of Embarks and Vampires, and been in the industry, in the gaming industry, about the last 15 years. Now doing the Paradise Tycoon game, and we got into blockchain since last year. Even that the company has been established in 2017. We made Tycoon games, free-to-play games, so it's for seasoned team, plus 70 years of team experience in games, and very happy to jump on the blockchain play to earn model.
Awesome, thank you. And last but not least, Arkin.
Thanks, Ilya. So I'm Arkin. I'm one of the co-founders of Rainy. As an Australian, I'm loving the new time slot. It's a lot more palatable, 11 o'clock p.m. here instead of the usual 3 a.m. we do with Sanctor events. So, happy to be here. My background's in financial services. I previously built a fintech with Rainy's other founder, Mindspheres. We ended up selling that to a private equity firm and decided to launch Rainy since we have a passion for gaming, the arts, finance, and technology. And it's one of those rare instances where we were able to combine everything together under Web3. We were introduced to the Avalanche team when we were looking at which chain to launch our game on, Rainy the Lords of Light. And we were really impressed with what they were doing, the way Avalanche seems to be positioning themselves as one of the main gaming chains, and their overall value proposition and support, as well as, the ability to eventually launch your own subnet and control things like gas and security. So that brings us to today.
Awesome. So that tells you a little bit about our speakers. And to start, I think this was a nice segue. Nikhil, if you will, could you introduce a little bit about kind of Avalanche technology and what does it offer for game developers? Why is Avalanche such an incredible place to build games?
Happy to touch on that. Great question, by the way. So I think overall, the high overview for Avalanche as a technology is that you could think of blockchains very much like cities in the way that they scale. So, blockchains, like cities, have a finite amount of real estate that people can live on, and there are arguably an inelastic amount of folks that can live in this city. Take New York City, for example. And so two very predictable things happen as a city becomes more and more popular and used. It becomes more expensive because there's a finite amount of real estate. And the second thing is it becomes more congested. And the same things happen with blockchains as well, except instead of real estate, you have block space. Instead of people, you have transactions. And so, in order to scale both blockchains and cities, there's really two strategies only, and that is to scale vertically, that is with skyscrapers for cities or layer twos with blockchains, or horizontally, which is creating new cities in the real world. Like obviously New York City is not the only city in the world. There are many other great cities, and blockchain, same thing as well, which is horizontal scaling. So with using that analogy, Avalanche is actually not just a blockchain, but you can think of us as like a city as a service. Allows you to spin up your own city or blockchain, configure it how you would like it, and for your specific niche use case, whether it's a game, institutional, financial application, it could be absolutely anything there. And then, of course, we use a sort of novel consensus mechanism known as Avalanche Consensus, which I could dive into deeply later on. But the high overview, all you need to know is that there's 3 consensus mechanisms. The classical version is what most proof-of-stake blockchains use, some iteration of this, whether it's Solana, Polkadot, even Polygon. And all you need to know is that it is fast, but there's a limit to how fast you can finalize a transaction. I think the fastest transaction finality you can get is about 5 seconds, 5 to 7 seconds, and you can only have 150 validators active in consensus at a given time. Nakamoto consensus is what Bitcoin and Ethereum use. Very, very decentralized, but very, very slow. Avalanche consensus kind of marries the two of them. So you're able to have a highly decentralized network where we have like over 1,300 validators in the network, all of them active in consensus, and sub-second finality. So that's the high overview of Avalanche from a tech perspective and why a game might be interested in it.
Will, anything you want to add there?
The only thing I'd add is, when you look to build like on a layer 1, it's different from like this Web 2 concept of you start your own company and you're on your own. Because of just where the crypto industry is, each L1 or L2, whatever it is, will have its own business development team that is really should be there to support projects and support founders. I think the gaming team at Avalabs is pretty stacked, if I do say so myself. We have Ed, he's a former gaming industry executive. We have myself, I was a former banker. We have former consultant. And then we have blockchain experts on the gaming-only focused team. So we're the ones to help, really just help you succeed, whether that's connecting you to other projects, introducing you to VCs, or, being a backboard for ideas and strategy. So that's the only thing I would add.
Awesome. I really love the city as a service analogy. I often talk about kind of successful games being kind of self-sustaining worlds. So kind of that analogy for infrastructure is really, really cool. I wanted to kind of turn the tables a little bit over to kind of people on the other side of it, the game developers. We have a number of games represented here. And so I wanted to ask, and anybody can jump in any particular order, what is it like to go about the process of choosing a blockchain which to utilize in your game? And how did you arrive at Avalanche as your chain of choice?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a stab at this. I think it's quite a long process, because there are a lot of chains that most people don't even realize exist. And there's a ton of trade-offs with obviously the potential funding that you can get from a chain being one, because games aren't cheap to build, especially if you want to build A to AAA quality games. But I think what made Avalanche a clear winner in our eyes is that there isn't really a chain at the moment that provides a suitable experience for a typical Web2 user. There is no chain that, you have chains that have low fees, some have no fees, but they don't then have the throughput requirements. And as well as that, they also don't meet the simple onboarding requirements. It is not a chain where you can just have a custodial wallet on board and then also have your game on board. And that's something that Avalanche really allows you to do. As Nikhil said, it's a city as a service. It's a blockchain as a service that you can fully customize to whatever your needs are. And every game has unique needs. So no single general purpose chain will be able to facilitate. For example, we're building an FPS. We have different needs from an RTS game. But no specific chain can facilitate all of that. So what you do need is that city as a service that you can customize and build it to whatever you require.
Yeah, I can almost continue from that. Like from our side, it's all about the future. Also, like how does the same league, like is it secure? Is it growing? So does it have future? How's the building? And we want to build games that last for decades. So it's like having a low gas fees, scalability, the general transactions, ease of access to users. Like what is the existing blockchain user base or community? So it's all about the future, how we run it, because we want to make a game that can hold on a lot of people in it and enjoying the game. So that needs to be something that future it's in hold and in working.
Yep. I'll just speak quickly about our experience as well. I think it was a number of conversations with a number of representatives from different chains, whether they're L1 or L2. Just roll-up solutions on ETH and so on. But in our case, we also had a lot of real-world experience because the Rainy token is already on Binance Smart Chain, Ethereum, and Phantom. And so we got to experience firsthand the weaknesses of each of those chains. So obviously BSC, the main weakness is the centralization. Ethereum, in periods of a lot of activity, the fees become just impractical to run a game on. And Phantom, it really seemed to struggle in periods of market volatility. So ultimately, one of the main propositions that Avalanche has over the competitors is the sub-chain offering, where you can control the gas fees to make sure it's affordable, but not so cheap that you're running risk of DDoS attacks or so on. But also you can insulate yourself from the congestion on the network, since you kind of have your own standalone offering. That in conjunction with the fact that it seems to be a major priority for the Avalanche team to onboard a lot of games, and they've been very great at giving us a lot of support. Just made it a pretty obvious choice.
Awesome. I wanted to kind of follow up around this. A lot of it comes down, from what we heard right now, comes down to, being able to customize your own subnet for your own purposes and kind of almost run your own chain, right? But are there any challenges with that as opposed to kind of going on an established chain? And, Nikhil, Will, kind of what do you do to try to minimize those hurdles of trying to set up your own chain? That sounds like a daunting task.
Yeah, sure. Happy to take a first stab at it, and then I'll pass it over to Will. So, the great thing here with the Avalanche ecosystem is that if you're somebody that really feels like you require your own network, which is a great problem to have because it must indicate that either you already have a high amount of usage for your network, you need to have specific configurations that aren't there by default, or three, you anticipate an extremely high number of users and transaction volume. So all things which are good. And, for that specific audience, we've provided sort of the tooling. The Avalabs team has built the tooling to make this subnet process as easy as possible rather than building a blockchain from scratch. Because building a blockchain from scratch is expensive, it's time-consuming and risky. I think Axie Infinity really demonstrated that. Great that they were able to sort of recover after some of the issues that they had run into, but it's not an easy task. It took them a long time, it's very expensive, and they ended up getting hacked. So, the issue here is that, it's not a simple task. And so we created a tool known as the subnet command line interface, which allows you to, simply plug in the validators that you need, use the subnet EVM, which is the virtual machine for anybody to plug into their subnet itself, and use this tooling to spin up a subnet easily, locally first, then on testnet, and then whenever you're sort of ready, push it to mainnet as well. Kribata with their Swimmer network, and of course DeFi Kingdoms with DeFi Kingdoms chain both followed this sort of path. But for the audience that doesn't want to, sort of spin up a subnet, because, though it is far easier than building a blockchain from scratch, it still is not a trivial task. For that audience, there's the C chain that is readily available. You can think of this as a super fast version of Ethereum that, utilizes Avalanche Consensus, so it allows you to have sub-second finality, cheap fees, and all that good stuff. But all the tooling is all there ready for you. You have RPC nodes from various different providers. You have wallet integrations. You can leverage the composability of DeFi and over $1 billion of total value lock there. So you have all that at your disposal. So there's room for both audiences. If you want to build your own blockchain, there's room for that. There's the Swimmer networks of the world and DeFi Kingdom chains of the world. If you want to use an existing solution, you don't want to just build your own network from scratch, that's also here at Avalanche too, which is why we're pretty happy here. I'll pass it over to Will because Will also works with a lot of the games on the ground themselves that are launching some of these subnets and going through and asking some of these questions.
Thank you. I actually won't add too much. I think there are videos online of people launching subnets in a minute. I think technically the technical lift doesn't have to be that heavy. I think the more challenging aspect is just the strategy behind your subnet deployment, getting users over there, figuring out the economics of the subnet. So that includes, are you going to use your own token as gas, which is extremely attractive to many gaming projects, or are you going to use AVAX as the gas token? How are you going to reward validators? Setting up your validator network, so allow listing the parties in your own network and getting them onboarded. So I think I would only add that in most cases it is far less of a technical lift and more so other factors.
I want to hear also from the participants who are actually building or participating in the Avalanche ecosystem. What is it like from your perspective? How hard has the process been, or how hard do you perceive the process to be as you're going through this on your journeys?
Yeah, I guess I can jump on that. We see that's just a benefit, the scalability and having your own token for gas feeds. And I think in finding validators could be a big challenge, but with the current AVAX price, it's unlikely. It's more We see more. It's about how we can get like the challenge for need from the onboarding the non-crypto natives to installation of wallets and otherwise users have standing the gas fees and whatever. So it's more about we get a lot of benefits, and it's more about learning and using the set, and there's a lot of like help from the community, and also like we have had a lot of good help and talks with the Avalanche guys and others. So I think it's more about that we share and care each other to make it work. So it's more about that.
Yeah, I'll second that. Like, it's been a pretty smooth process, especially with the amount of help that the Avalanche team's been giving our blockchain engineering side. I think it's been great to work with them, and it's not a surprise that they've managed to attract so many big games and small games as the like.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add to that is coming back to what Nikhil was just speaking about, which is it is a little bit easier because they have the availability of the C chain as well. So in that sense, you can kind of get the best of both worlds, where if you don't have the scale to justify launching your own subnet from the outset, you can start on the C chain and work towards migrating to your own subnet when it makes sense to do so. So that kind of offsets the, I guess, difficulty in setting up all the validators yourself from the get-go if it doesn't make sense to do so straight away.
I want to follow up on this. One of the things that was mentioned is kind of onboarding. I think Tomas, you mentioned it. Onboarding regular gamers, regular users. And so one of the things that been so exciting about Web3 is the community aspect of it. And it feels like every chain has almost its own community. But with Avalanche, with kind of every game being able to run their own chain, does the community become fragmented? How do you kind of build your own community and also interact with the broader Avalanche community? And this is kind of a question to everybody. How does Avalanche on an ecosystem level support it, and how do kind of participants? How do you try to access the broader community as well?
One example I would like to say is probably Krabata and Swimmer Network. They did a really great job with this because, though they have their own chain, they're interacting with other projects that are there in the community themselves. So, one example is Snake City, for instance, and is sort of exciting casual game that's entered the ecosystem. They're initially going to launch on the C chain, but Krabata and their Swimmer Network team essentially was working with them to sort of offer certain partnerships with them, with Krabata specifically, and add certain value to them, and they can obviously leverage Swimmer Network with their extremely cheap fees and sort of composability with the Krabata ecosystem. And because of that, Snake City is now launching on their own subnet, which is fantastic. And I believe even Pirateverse is having their own subnet as well, where other games are also launching on their subnet. And so what we're sort of seeing here is that there are sort of some games that are probably going to be more standalone. These might be like your extremely large games that are going to have maybe 1 million monthly active users, something like that. There are going to be a lot of folks playing it, and they might just be just their game, or maybe just the game of those studios. But then you're seeing some other, gaming subnets that are almost creating like a mini arcade of games that they're sort of drawing games over to them, incentivizing them with different offerings, whether it's sharing of liquidity, whether it's investment, whether it's partnership, whether it's offering some of your users, and all these various different interesting things. And so I think we're just seeing the beginning of like a Cambrian explosion of subnets, and where there's going to be almost an incentives war between all these different subnets to bring games onto them, where everyone's going to say, hey, like, my subnet is the best for casual games. No, mine is. And I think that will hopefully sort of raise the tide for all boats there. But that's just my perspective. I'd love to hear for the rest of them here as well.
Yeah, I can tell. Like it's more about like creating the cooperation opportunities, like between the games and in the Avalanche ecosystem. Is we see they're very interesting. Like, and it can be something else than just like that requires support from the chain. It can be example just brand cooperation, crossovers, cross promotes between the games, like joint events. It can be. There's a lot of opportunities that we are just like seeing the iceberg at the moment, like the tip of the iceberg. So I think that's the point of that. When we see the other projects, they'll be so cool, and it can be a smaller game, it can be a bigger game, and how they react, and it can be like almost like a games as a service, but between the different games, so having like inside jokes or something that excites the community also?
For us, like we have to change the way we build our community. It's like totally different from like with the last year. Like last year, we just like announced the game and some event milestone, and a lot of user or like community members will join into the channels. But at this time, like it's very challenging to get the real like players or real community members who are interested in the game. So we switch to kind of the own like solution that we try to onboard the traditional gamers, like the one who never know about crypto. We try to onboard them and try to convert them into the like NFT players or crypto users. And we found that they are kind of this solution is much like easier for us. Like we are the traditional game studio, and we don't have many connections or many partners on blockchain. So that's how we are doing right now in this bear market.
I was just going to say that I echo everyone's sentiment. I come across a lot of games, especially in the Avalanche ecosystem, and it's surprising. It's as if, no game is in competition with the other. It's as if, they're all working together, which is great. Hosting Twitter Spaces together, like was said, tournaments together. So it's an amazing collaborative effort. Love it.
I want to dig in a little bit deeper into kind of that user onboarding effort, because there's one part of it, actually building out the game, but kind of the game development and distribution process kind of long, right? You need to develop the game, test the game, get it into the hands of users, and a lot of the kind of the publishing stack that we see in Web 2 hasn't really formalized in the Web3 space yet. So I'm curious, how is that being dealt with in the Avalanche ecosystem? How do you think about kind of user acquisition, game distribution? Do you see do you start trying to replicate certain parts of the Web 2 publishing stack in the Web3 space?
I think one thing that we've noticed is that the important thing is first providing infrastructure and tooling for folks, first of all, to build the games themselves, as seamlessly as possible and spin up whatever they sort of need. And the second bit is also making it easy as possible for users to also use the platform too. So that means, like, for instance, a lot of normal users that maybe play on, buy games on Steam or Epic Games, and then that's the way that that's their mechanism of gaming, or just being on their phone and downloading something on the App Store. That means it's very important for us to also have custodial wallet solutions that allow for users to essentially sign in with their email and password and just have a wallet minted in the back end. And that's something that is really important, while providing the option to use a core wallet, use a MetaMask wallet, use a Coin98 and whatnot. So that's the first thing that we're doing. We're working with several providers on that front. It includes also fiat on-ramp solutions so that users can avoid bridging, avoid exchanges, because there's some folks that have never touched crypto and they're about to be onboarded through a game, and this might be their first interaction with a blockchain to begin with. And so with that in mind, we want to make it as simple as possible, where you just use your credit card, sign in, provide some information, and then you're good to go. So those are a few things that we're doing, basically adding some of the rails to make it as simple as possible for a brand new user that hasn't touched crypto to actually interact with it. But on the user acquisition side, there are also some things that we've been working on too. Like, for example, with DeFi Kingdoms, there's the Multiverse Incentive Program that is a user-facing sort of user acquisition program that allows for basically incentives to be doled out in a performance-based mechanism, where as you sort of hit a certain size, whether that's several thousand monthly active users and like maybe 1 million transactions, then after that point, each milestone you hit, you're able to sort of reach a certain amount of liquidity that's kind of pushed out to your users, and it can be pushed out via airdrop or whatever that sort of is. So there are a lot of different things that we've been sort of working with here at the Alpha Labs team to provide not only the tooling and infrastructure, but to work with other third-party providers to make it as simple as possible for users to get on. And the next thing that we're, of course, have been working on also, and we've tried it out with DeFi Kingdoms, is how to also work on the user acquisition front. So these are some of the things that we've been doing, of course. And the great thing is that we've also been working with a lot of really strong teams as well that already have a community and a user base. One example is Castle Crush, where they have, they've had 75 million plus downloads, and they're going to be obviously building their own subnet for their own gaming community. And so the great thing is that they've been marketing not only to the Avalanche community, not only to the broader Web3 community, but also to their own community as well, which is great. So these are some of the things that we've seen, sort of on the ground with from a user acquisition standpoint, and also, towards a normal traditional gamer standpoint. Love to hear also from the rest of you on thoughts on sort of how to acquire users.
Yeah, I think on acquiring people, as long as you make a good game, people will come. But along with the fact the game has to be good, the user experience has to be great. I think exactly what Nikhil said. Like, if you don't have the ability for people to sign up with an email and password where you custody their assets for them, if you look at Steam, for example, people typically can trade up to $60,000 on CS:GO with a skin. They don't really care that someone else is actually in control of their assets. That's a very crypto native thing. A lot of people are happy to trust someone else to do so because they have been for their entire life. And then in terms of fiat on-ramps, typically we have quite high rejection rates from what you would think is the norm these days. A rejection rate is when the transfer itself is rejected from the bank to whatever you're on-ramping. So it's about getting known solutions like PayPal, people of that sort of stature, where if someone as a child goes up to their dad and says, hey, can you sign in with your PayPal account so I can put some money on this game, instead of saying something like, hey, can you just sign up to MoonPay for me? It's all about getting that clean user experience beyond the blockchain, in terms of just having it feel like it's a regular game that, like, whoever is playing it's playing it, and they can't even tell that they're on chain. Because then you get all the benefits of that smooth Web2 experience that makes a game enjoyable, fun, and long-lasting. But also you get the benefits of the ownership and the variety of things you can do with NFTs and tokenized economy on the Web3 side.
Hey, Tim, I had a follow-up for you there, and I 100% agree with you. On the payment side of things, it's you mentioned being blocked. Is it the bank blocking it because they flag it as a crypto-related transaction, or do you have any more color there? And besides PayPal, what else do you think works?
Yeah, so it's like different banks have different kind of interactions with different. I think the US specifically, it can be quite difficult to get capital on board. Like in other countries, it can be a bit more relaxed. But it is all about those known brand names. I think that's the issue. If you're interacting with something like MoonPay and you've never done that before, it can take a while with telling a bank, hey, I am not being scammed, because as well as being something where we're using it to onboard, some people might be trying to use it to get capital into crypto, which is seen like in an illicit manner, which is seen as a bad thing from the bank's perspective. So it's mainly about getting trusted parties on board. Like I know Circle's for institutional, but that type of name where they have some kind of licenses that show a bank that you're transferring this to a trusted entity, as opposed to being just something that custodies assets and then uses someone else's banking license on the back end, which is typically what most fiat on-ramping solutions do these days.
Got it. No, that's helpful. Thank you.
One thing I kind of also wanted to follow up on this, one thing that was said is, if it's a really good game, gamers will come. And from my conversation with gamers, a lot of times they discover about a game in Web3 is because one of their friends said that you could earn on it, right? But the games that we're seeing come up now are of kind of a different focus, right? There's kind of a, games for the sake of, enjoyment and entertainment and that experience, and then the earning is kind of an other aspect of it as opposed to the prime focus. So how do you see gamers discovering games within the Avalanche ecosystem?
On our side, I can speak a bit to our strategy. like, we think that the way to acquire, gamers is the same way that you acquire gamers in Web2. It's the typical route of using streamers, high impact marketing such as trailers to showcase the quality of the game itself. But the key really comes down to those opinion leaders, which are the streamers. If they see a big streamer playing a game, they will come and try it out. If the game is fun, they will stay. And if the game is fun for the streamer, they will also stay. So you get their audience coming along with you. I don't think the user acquisition strategy here changes. I think that's one thing that we should probably bridge our heads around, is that it stays the same. Web2 has already probably perfected this. Now, if you're talking about a game where you can create things, I do think the user acquisition strategy there changes a little bit, because there is no creation platform where you can earn revenue, and that is a value-added activity. Gaming itself should really be a value extraction where someone is paying for the entertainment. If they're good at the game, sure, they might be able to earn something, but really the acquisition difference comes on the creation side, where they could potentially earn some money by creating content that other people can enjoy. At least that's my 2 cents on this.
Yeah, I can second that. I think we come from the background of free-to-play games and Web2 games, so acquiring users, it's more like it's a key factor. You have to have a friend that likes the game. In this case, it's basically nowadays it's influencers, and it's basically a friend that influencer as your friend that showcases that it's a good game, fun game to join. But our strategy is also that because we have the older existing Web2 games, we try to bring also some of the users from their side to try out our game, and I think that's one way from our side to do it. But it needs that kind of new models to bring out and get the people to test it, and it's more about that they can share what they have done in the game to their friends and relatives. They need to be easy cases to showcase what they have done and what they enjoy, so that others can join the fun too.
Yeah, I think the most effective strategy that we've seen is to just echoing what has already been said by the past 2 speakers, select the right streamers based on the sort of audience that they maintain. So if you are building a trading card game like we are, that has drawn a lot of inspiration from Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, then it makes sense to seek out and contact streamers who play that game day in, day out, because you know with a large degree of confidence that their audience enjoy those sort of games and are going to be the target for your game. So I think being very selective with the streamers that you reach out to and work out some showcasing for your game, whether that's on Twitch or YouTube, is the most effective strategy by far. You can also get some exposure by doing some social media marketing, sort of viral tweets if your content is retweet worthy. But I think to actually get people playing the game, it's really important that they see how it plays in real time. And I don't think there's a better option than getting the right streamers to showcase that for you.
Do you see esports playing any sort of part in this process?
Francis, do you have any thoughts on this? Because I honestly had a pretty bearish take on esports and guilds for a while, and then Francis and Calvin from Shrapnel actually turned me on to the good side again, and I was just like, okay, I think I understand it, and there's a real spot for esports and guilds.
I'd actually love to hear your take now that you've had some time to sit on what we've said, and then I'll pitch in afterwards.
For sure. Yeah. So in general, I had a little bit of an apprehension with not necessarily esports teams specifically, but more so guilds, which folks said that would be like the model of esports teams, but we haven't really seen a proper proof of that as of yet. And the reason being is sort of somewhat like what Francis has mentioned, that guilds in their sort of current form right now are very beneficial to sort of play to earn style games, but they might not mesh nearly as well with games that might require, are structured in a little bit of a different way. So for instance, for games that, you need a sort of volume of players and the main goal is to sort of earn a certain outcome, guilds do work somewhat well, but the sustainability of such games is still to be determined and really does rely on basically more input than output, which is not always sustainable, of course. So then for games that are more so geared towards, those who are simply just trying to have fun and play a good game, or those that are highly skilled and are trying to play a game to the highest ability possible, for those, the traditional guild model doesn't work. And so, Francis and Calvin both sort of put me on the model that, the future model for guilds, and that this is probably the direction that many of them are going to go towards, are going to be sort of esports style guilds, where there's going to be teams that have a very sort of strong performance within a specific game. There's going to be potentially maybe some revenue sharing between them. They're going to have a brand, basically similar to any of the top esports teams that you saw, whether it was like Optic Gaming back in the day, or whether it's like FaZe right now or Team Liquid. It's going to be basically that, and they're going to be sort of guilds essentially. And so that was sort of a structure that I think I could really get behind, and I think could be pretty beneficial to the space overall. And the second thing is also guilds for very specific use cases also. So, in Shrapnel, for instance, there's a concept of like UGC, where you can sort of, build out mods for the game itself, maps, and all these other interesting things. And so guilds of also builders, folks that are actually building different games and designing different games, designing different maps, and then they can sort of share that revenue as well. That's also another model that can work as well. But once again, it's still contingent on, there needs to be some sort of value add that the guild provides, other than just a large amount of users. There needs to be some sort of, edge that they have. And so I think that's something I can get behind. But feel free to chime in, Francis.
Yeah, I think that's exactly spot on. Like one of the things that guilds eventually pivoting over to with bringing high skill players in, like Nikhil said, is that actually really helps keep a community that is able to foster esports. Because if all these guilds are acquiring and paying high skill players, users to play, either through some form of revenue share or sponsorship, that keeps the landscape of that game competitive. So what you won't see is an exodus of players because, hey, I'm playing at the top level and I can't find a game, because there are people that are now being paid and incentivized on a mass scale to be that good. And it really helps turn the esports of that game into a healthy environment where it is, continuously rich and lush with potential players and upcoming prospects. So you kind of flip the issue of seeding that high skill player content in the game. High skilled players like ecosystem in the game, because the guilds can provide that already, which really helps accelerate esports. And obviously everyone loves watching esports if they're actually into the game itself. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people do. And then that just amplifies the audience, because more and more people can start coming to watch it because they know there's a healthy competitive scene. So it does exactly that. And then also the creator side, as Nikhil said, a lot of guilds are probably going to switch over to creating content as opposed to just consuming content and selling it onto the open market, because in reality, guilds need to become something that adds value. Like, guilds can't be consistent value extractors. Like, games will just start to design out systems that allow them to kind of cooperate. If everything turns into just, I'm trying to take money off the game, then no one's going to really want to facilitate that, and they'll just get designed out of every game in existence, I think.
Actually, we are building to battle royale games, and we kind of focus on esports, the kind of real esports teams. Like currently, like Metados, we have partnered with 10 national esports teams, kind of the top teams in Vietnam and Southeast Asia, and we for the NFT sales or battle pass sales, which is the NFT as well. We use a percent of the sale for the tournament, the esports tournaments, and we invite the top esports team to join into that tournament, and they will touch the rewards, the buyers, the NFT buyers, they will kind of use their money for set up the tournaments. So it benefits for the esports team, for the development team, and also for the user, the players, because they love those teams and they willing to pay the money to buy the battle pass or the entity itself. They have the entities and they support their teams. This model is similar to like kind of battle pass of like Dota 2, like the international battle pass, and we think that we could use that model for esports.
I want to jump in here with a little bit, something maybe a little bit controversial, but we've seen over the past few months and really over the past even year or so that traditional gamers and traditional gaming organizations have really balked at the idea of Web3. And you can look at kind of response from Web2 gaming communities. You can look at kind of the Stalker debacle, now what happened with Minecraft, and there's a lot more examples of kind of the rejection of the Web3 paradigm to start. And so I'm curious if a lot of kind of the strategies for user onboarding kind of depend on KOLs, streamers, professional gamers really kind of adopting this and kind of highlighting the content, their excitement, their participation in the game ecosystems. How did you get over this initial hurdle of that rejection?
See, what I think's really happened there with gamers rejecting NFT games specifically is if you look at most of these games that people were telling Web2 gamers to play, like they aren't really that fun. Like they aren't designed as mediums of entertainment. It's more of this is a financial instrument with 3D characters pasted on top, or even 2D characters pasted on top. It isn't something that you would necessarily sit there and play on your own, in your own volition, when there is no financial potential financial gain on top of that. And then there's also the fact that these aren't really experiences that you would ask for if you were a Web2 gamer. You're onboarding capital, you're paying potentially thousands to get into a game. It just screams, these people are trying to take my money to them. So what they really want is just a clean, smooth experience that they've seen before. They're used to it, and then you tell them afterwards, hey, by the way, did you know you're on a blockchain doing all these things? If you want, you can leave and take all this money with you. You have to kind of reverse that mentality of going from shoving it down their throats and saying, hey, you're on chain, to just being like, hey, this is a game. And then later on, you can turn around and say, hey, by the way, everything's on chain. If you actually own this, so you can leave if you want to.
Yeah, I would agree. I think ultimately the Web3 gaming space is waiting for one or more games to achieve a great degree of success in their own right as a fun and enjoyable and addictive game that people play for the sake of playing the game, with the earnings or financial upside as an ancillary benefit rather than the primary or sole source of motivation. I think once we've had some experiences there, then the paradigm should shift. It's just kind of the experience that most of the Web2 gamers who have some healthy skepticism at this stage have had so far hasn't been great in terms of the gaming titles that have been offered to them. And it could be that, that's just the first evolution of the games, or they haven't come across the right ones yet, or that the really good quality games that have engaging gameplay and really immersive, they just take longer to produce. And we only just saw GameFi explode recently, so I think that could be the catalyst that'll trigger that. So I think, yeah, the short answer is it's just a matter of time, and I think inevitably we're going to see more games that are just really great in their own right, that happen to be on Web3, and then it offers that extra benefit of having some skin in the game where they can benefit from the success of the game that they enjoy playing, rather than just being a consumer separated from the company, controlling everything and capturing all of the financial upside.
Yeah, and I think if you look back to free-to-play as well, like something that a lot of people now would turn around and go, why did gamers dislike that? When free-to-play first became a thing, it was like massively fought against. People like, why should I play this game for free when there's these even better games for $60 type thing, where they just assumed every free-to-play game was a terrible game that was just out to take their money through some kind of microtransaction or something of the sorts. And the same thing will happen in crypto. Like 10 years down the line, we'll look at it and go, why were people negative about this? Why did no one want to do it? You'll see a repeating pattern as we transition from paid games to free games to potentially games that you can earn on. I think it's just a natural cycle of skepticism within gamers, because the gaming industry hasn't necessarily been kind to them with the way they have incentivized this fee structure of, pay to win and all the microtransactions that exist within games.
Yeah, I can second that. It's like, since the free-to-play game, it was like a horrified thing for many people to how it affects, but I see it in a way that it's how the things mature and how many games there are, and the people get just used to it, that they play different kind of ways. There's still space to have different kind of like ways to play, like PC, console, mobile. It can be virtual, it can be crypto. So it's more about like getting to know and have some time there. So I would say there's no need to have any kind of shock that will the players play, because we're a human, we like to play a lot of different things, so it's more about having the space and having good games out there. It's and boosting them, showcasing that we got this cool thing out there now, and like sharing that also with the community, because if they like the stuff, they also wanna emphasize that okay, this could be good. But of course, there will be people that just that are not just into it, and that's fine. There's a lot of ways to play, and we are making like a new future that we hope that the players also give their own support and showcase their own values, how they like to play this kind of games in what we're building now.
We're coming up on to the top of the hour, and before we close, I always like to end with kind of a round of everybody saying what it is that they're excited about in the coming months. So yeah, I'd like to go around and have everybody say kind of what they're excited about for the Avalanche Gaming Ecosystem. In the next, you can pick your time frame, months, years. I'm just kind of curious what everybody's looking towards. Miko, I think you're up first on my screen.
Yeah, the most thing that I'm excited about in the immediate term, I would say the next few months, is for some of these AAA games to come online, right? And this is sort of what was talked about too initially, the issue with the P2E games out there too, besides economics and sustainability, is just more it wasn't a fun, true gaming experience that people look forward to. So now you can proudly refer people to come play and try out these Web3 games. So that's the most important thing that I'm looking forward to in the short, sort of immediate term. And then long term, like we talked about, on-ramping and payments, etc. Just I know there's a lot of solutions at work, and we have some elements of that in our roadmap as well at P2E Analytics. It's just making it super easy for non-crypto native folks to get onboarded into these types of gaming experiences. Whether it's making payments easier or account tracking easier, etc. So those are the two kind of big things that I'm looking forward to and that I'm excited about.
On?
For me, like I'm very excited to try and to develop our own like subnet on Avalanche. Like we are just in the development space, but we gonna like integrate the network into like traditional gaming by like building some kind of SDK or plugin for Unity, and building some kind of template for indie developers so they can use our like SDK, our template to make the game without caring about like smart contract or blockchain. They just develop their games, and they don't need to care about like Web3 or anything else, and we can help our developers.
Awesome. Francis?
Yeah, I think on my side, the thing I'm most looking forward to, it might be more of a long-term thing, but as more games come out, there's a very clear mentality shift in how games interact with each other. Like if you look in the typical Web2 space, no one really wants to do cross promotions because it's not beneficial. Whereas it is both beneficial to the players and the games themselves to do cross promotions in Web3. So I'm really excited to see how that plays out in the long term, where you can have partnerships between games and no one's fighting necessarily over, can I get your $60 or can I get theirs, and which game do I put that in? Instead, it's a set of games where you can move freely in and out of, and I think players will enjoy that a lot more, and game developers will enjoy that a lot more, because we get to do more fruitful kind of cross collaborations, and it's beneficial to us both.
Thank you. And Nikhil?
Yeah, sort of mirroring what some of the other folks said also. I think in the short term, I'm really excited about some of the first wave of like games that are going to be coming live, sort of end of this year. That's something I'm super excited about. In the sort of medium term, I'm excited about a lot of the sort of brand new games. You have another cohort that Will and I have been sort of speaking to, another cohort of really strong games as well that, will sort of be coming on the horizon too. So hopefully sort of mid of next year. And then, longer term, I think Avalanche, there are a lot of really exciting things coming to Avalanche, for example, like new sort of virtual machines. I believe Kevin has mentioned this a couple of times, but whether it's like virtual machines using other languages like Wasm, Move, and things like that, whether it's like optimizations to the actual EVM itself, privacy-based virtual machines, and then then the next sort of exciting thing I really am looking forward to is sort of cross subnet communication. So a universal mechanism of bridging between subnets, which is of course being worked on right now. Can't dive any deeper, but these are some things that have been sort of mentioned, and I'm really excited about that coming down the pike and how that's going to affect gaming and how it's going to impact sort of the different subnets that are individually functioning. So hopefully Avalanche will be like a large arcade of games with a collection of sovereign games in their own sort of machines that can then communicate with players going in between.
Move on, Avalanche. I think that deserves a conversation in and of itself, but Tomas, you're up next.
So we are actually releasing our pre-alpha mobile version soon, and we are very excited to bring some of our existing Web2 user base to try out the Paradise Tycoon, and also we're excited to publish the white paper soon and some trailers and showcasing the full feature of the set of game, and hopefully we have some big news coming up. Unfortunately, I cannot announce them yet. So, but like the others were saying, that it's fun to see the other games are coming out, and also looking to the future, that when we're pushing out the games, what kind of partnerships we can do, and especially inside the Avalanche network, and how we've been in that community ecosystem to promote our games, and also the Twitter space or whatever, showcasing that other people are making, because that's the way to make also the users to enjoy and find new games, because I think that it's more usable to enjoy different kind of games and in different kind of moods. So we're excited about that too.
Awesome. Will?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to something a little simple. I went there to be more fun, non-idle games. So, I play a couple of the idle games on Avalanche every day, but looking forward to something that we can play socially while on a call with our colleagues working remotely, or our friends, hopping on a Discord voice chat, and actually playing a blockchain enabled game, because the list is pretty short, I think, today, but there's a long list coming very soon. So that's what I'm looking forward to most.
Just play our games.
Artkin?
Yeah, thanks. In the short term, I guess I'm looking forward to continuing to build out the RT-Log game world into a vast, immersive, and strategic game. Ramping up our marketing and onboarding a lot more players into playtesting. And outside of our game, I'm personally keen to try some truly fun Web3 games that I'm expecting to launch soon, and potentially collaborating with some other titles. Medium term, as we were discussing earlier, looking forward to watching the Web3 GameFi space evolve and mature. And in terms of non-gaming stuff I'm looking forward to, whenever it happens, I'm looking forward to inflation peaking and the conclusion of monetary policy tightening. That'll be a happy day.
Well, thank you, everybody. That takes us to the top of the hour. Actually, we're just a little bit past. I want to thank all of the speakers for sharing their thoughts. I thought this was a fantastic conversation, and thank you everybody who tuned in to listen. The recording for this, I don't know if I mentioned, but yeah, this is a recorded session. So we will be posting the recording of this up in a few days, and tune in next week for the continuation of this mini series. We will be talking about the Harmony Gaming Ecosystem. Thank you everybody again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks,
Cheers,
guys.
everyone.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.